Oh, okay. So making a stir fry. This is a project I did yesterday, and I documented the process of making it, but it was mostly just me bashing my head into the wall, fighting physics for a day. And it turns out the actual solution isn't all that complicated. So I want to kind of make a more streamlined video. This is an in-progress shot. I want to add some little video screens and stuff around here, kind of model some little techie bits. So I'll be putting up some other videos soon, showing how to do that. But yeah, so I started a couple months ago making a video making this robot arm, and I got through some of the rigging and a little bit of that, and I sometimes I'll run ahead to kind of like test stuff, so by the time I make the video I know what I'm talking about, and it's not just me like checking random buttons trying to figure out why things are broken. But in this case I ran too far ahead and I recorded a bunch of stuff. I never actually released the video, so I'll try to figure that out at some point. But yeah, all right, let's try to get into some stir fry. So this is the finished scene, and I'm gonna delete everything except for like the spatula and the bowl. All right, there we go. Back to one. So one of the first things to know about physics sims is it's really hard to mix and match different sims, like to have a cloth sim and a fluid sim play nice together. And so while it would be cool to like be able to fill the pan with frying oil and then stick other things in there that are floating around, it's not particularly practical. And so we're gonna have just the layer of oil in there be affected by the vegetables, but it's not going to affect the vegetables back. So let's figure out how to do that first with dynamic paint. So here, let me turn on the screencast keys. Yes. Okay. And hopefully my computer doesn't crash because I updated some drivers so I can play that Cyberpunk game, and now whenever I ask it to think too hard, it starts to explode. And blue screens. So, alright, so I've got that selected. I'm going to duplicate it, and then hit P and make it a new selection here. And then I'm going to select this top edge, hit F3 Grid Fill. And that's because when you do dynamic paint, it can sometimes show the topology underneath, of the geometry underneath. And so I want to just make sure it's kind of a grid. Subdivide, maybe even one more level later. We'll find out. Okay, so I'm just going to turn on dynamic paint here. I'm going to make it a canvas because that's what's being affected. Add canvas, and it will be waves. And here, let's turn the spatula into a brush. Dynamic paint, brush. And it should be, hey, it's already doing stuff. That's pretty good. So one thing, you can see that these waves are spreading across the surface really slowly. Like ripples actually move fairly quickly in like pans and stuff. And the reason it's going so slow is a couple of reasons. First, I made this guy huge. Like this is about how tall a normal person would be. And he's very big. And that's because the physics stuff, especially like the rigid body, doesn't really want to do anything smaller than like 20 centimeters, and we're doing a bunch of tiny little pieces of food. So I just blew up the whole thing. I think the cloth sim, which is surprisingly what we're going to be using, works a little bit better at smaller scales, but yeah, okay. So we can, so the plan is we're going to do all the physics bigger, but then speed them all up so that it kind of looks like normal again. So right here, time scale, I'm just going to try changing this to 2, and see if maybe that makes everything move a little faster. Yes, that's okay. Yeah, that's looking closer to the right scale. And maybe it's not the best to eyeball this sort of stuff. Like if you just eyeball a bunch of physics, you can probably end up with a result that isn't all that great. But it's what we're gonna do. When the time comes, I'm gonna apply a subsurface over this, and that's gonna really make it feel a lot less jagged. Like maybe I can make this so it only appears in the render. Yeah. Okay. And now let's give this a little bit of color. So I'm going to get rid of these here and give it an oil material. And I think for that, all I'm going to do here, let's make this glossy. Maybe a little bit kind of oil colored here with no roughness. How's that look? Again, and I say this all the time, but whenever anything has reflections and stuff, like glass or fluids, they're really defined by how they reflect light, and so you want to have an environment loaded in just so that you can really see what it's going to look like. Otherwise, this would all just be like a flat gray. You couldn't see anything. Okay, so that's looking okay. I'm going to add a transparent shader, and there's probably better ways to do this, but I'm just going to mix those together, and that feels a little bit like like oil. Okay. Let's just jump straight into making some vegetables. All right. Let's add a cube. Gonna shrink it down to a nice kind of stir-fry size here. And subdivide it. I could probably subdivide it more, but let's just get some little chunks going. So I'm making all of these as one object, but it's going to, once you run the physics sim, it's going to treat each piece as its own, which is actually really convenient. Here, let's use this. Let's bevel all these corners here, maybe inset the top and bottom just to give it a little bit more data. And this will be like a carrot. We'll have a couple carrots going on. I'm always nervous because so much of physics stuff just comes down to tweaking things and finding that one slider that's making everything explode. But I'm optimistic. It worked. It worked okay yesterday. Once I figured out to use, well, I'll show you. So what I'm hoping is that once the physics sim starts, these will all kind of soften up and it won't be so obvious that they're all cubes. But maybe I'll just add a little bit of variety right now just to mix things up. But not too much. Okay, new material with an image texture. Let's load in. I think I saved it to Patreon. Stir fry. Yes, there we go. If we go into material preview, actually I should save this real quick. Because of the blue screen crashing issue, that has all the stir fry on every cube, and we want to split it up. So let's go into the UV editor, and that's not it. I can't totally figure out the pattern for what this does. I guess it's, I don't know. And so with all these selected, I'm going to hit U, project from view, and now I can just select each of these bits and say like, hey, this is going to be this gross potato. This one's also going to be this gross potato. This one's the celery. These ones are delicious carrots. Yeah. And the bigger they are, the more I'm trying to give them kind of an interesting texture, just, you know. But ideally, we don't even have to be all that specific. We're just trying to, the big thing we're trying to do here, even more than simulating a perfect, you know, a stir fry, is just capture that feeling of a stir fry. In fact, I was surprised with my final result, how much I was expecting to have to hide it with a bunch of steam and sizzling and all of that, and the fact that we didn't really do that was surprising to me. Okay, so let's put these over the pan, maybe scale them all. I'm not going to scale them, I'm just going to duplicate and add more. Yeah. And we could shuffle these around, add even more variety, but I don't really think it's going to matter. I don't think we're going to see a lot of repetition. Maybe select some of these tall ones and just make them a little bit smaller and flatter. Yeah, we can also tweak this at any time too if we want to go in and tweak that. Alright, so go into the physics tab and let's just make this cloth. And it disappears because it's trying to already run the simulation. My guess is it's going to fall straight through the pan because we have not yet set up the pan as a collision object. So select the pan, say, hey, you're a collision object. And look at that, they fall right in. That's great. Here, I'm going to hide the oil. But they all just crumple up in the bottom of the bowl, which is not ideal. But that's easily fixable. Let's go down here and let's check internal springs. Let's just see what that does just like that. Okay, well, each individual piece is being good, but they're all intersecting, so we'll check self-collisions down here. And now they're getting a little bit interesting. They're flying away. Why are you flying away? Ha-ha! Alright, well, it's time to start dialing in the physics. Vertex mass, let's try turning up the mass a little bit first. I'm going to turn down the self-collision distance really small so that they're not intersecting on accident. I'll just apply all the transforms too, just in case that helps. And okay, there we go. Fewer things exploding. I'm happy. I might actually turn it up a little bit just to keep them separated because I want them to fill the pan a little bit. And it's actually kind of okay if we have a slightly unstable physics sim in this case because they're all sizzling around and it's a very low friction agitated environment. I'm great. I'm going to select the spatula here, make it a collision object, and now we should start seeing some stir-fry action. Just throwing the pieces around. That's kind of cool. Everything's kind of drifting. That isn't as cool. Cool. All right. Let's go in, and anywhere we see the word friction, let's just start turning up the friction. Friction against each other. That'll be good. I'm going to turn up the friction of the pan quite a bit. Soft body and cloth. Let's set that to, like, I don't know, 33. See what happens. Just trying to keep stuff from getting too wild. Interesting. Some of these pieces are getting stuck on there. So one thing we'll do at the end that I'm not doing for preview purposes is we'll crank up the quality steps, and that means as stuff is like moving around, there's less chance of it kind of just intersecting straight into one of the pieces of food. And so this is basically the time resolution. And the speed multiplier, I think we could probably make that like 1.5 and everything will feel more realistic. We want this to look like it's just falling right in the bowl. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, some of these pieces are a little weird. But again, my guess is if we turn up the distance here, we can keep some of that better, and maybe I'll try turning up the quality steps real quick. Now it's doing, because we changed it from 5 to 10, it's doing twice as many calculations per frame, but you get much better results because of that. Woo! That piece is sticking real good. So one thing I did before was I created a lid. It didn't render, but it did stick on top of the pan, and that kept any pieces from exploding out. But I think in this case, I'm just going to turn up the gravity. Oh, the gravity's already up. Great. And that's because I do have the physics twice as big. You know, if something's falling at 9.8 meters per second or whatever, just accelerating that is going to make the world feel smaller again. Okay, well, I'm going to have to take a second to figure out why this is intersecting quite as much as it is, but I'm going to unhide the oil here, and let's turn these pieces into also a dynamic paint brush. Add brush, and now they should be making little splashes. Are they not? We'll come back to that later. Alright, I'm gonna right-click on this and shade as smooth. Let's try to dial in the look of this food just a little bit so it doesn't look like just images on objects. The big thing I want to do here is just try to capture that feeling of like oily, hot food. So over here in the shader editor, this is where it's at, we could just turn down the roughness and turn up the specular. That's already doing quite a bit. In fact, maybe I'll turn the roughness way down and just let the normal map do a lot of it. So I'm going to plug this image texture into the normal map. Vector bump, plug it into the height, and we'll just turn down the distance and the strength and see if that's kind of looking. That's looking pretty good. Yeah. In fact, let's shrink all of these just a little bit. All these big pieces. I like my stir fry more finely chopped than that. And it's possible it'll help us a little bit in terms of the physics freakouts also. Like having a bunch of little pieces as opposed to a few large pieces. Yeah, that's looking okay. In fact, here let's double the amount. It's gonna really slow down the amount of time it takes to or its processing. But I want to get a bunch of vegetables in there. Okay, starting just right in the pan. And let's see if this maybe fixes our sticking to the spatula issue, because that would be nice. My guess is a lot of this would still be helped if I tweaked a few more of the friction settings. And I think there's still one setting I'm missing overall to keep stuff from exploding. In fact, let me look into that. Okay, yeah, I think I have this working a lot better. All I really had to do was turn up the vertex mass. So all the pieces of vegetable are just a little bit heavier, which is cool. And I think I can also fix this issue just by deleting the dynamic paint, re-adding it, and saying, "Hey, your canvas, don't forget that." And now it's working okay. Although I'm gonna make sure it's up above the subdivision here, and but yeah, now it's actually playing around. Here, let me subdivide it one more time. Now it's actually going to be playing with these little bits here, and it's just going to make everything feel a lot more like, oh! I feel like the subdivision should be fixing a lot of that, and I guess it's just too... Oh, it's because I don't have it on in the viewport. Okay, that makes a lot more of a difference here. So, I think it's kind of slowing things down a little bit too. This is a lot to ask it to do all at once, but... let's see how it renders. Okay, that's looking okay. Let's see. So there's other stuff we could do. We could kind of add some bubbles or something. Let's add some kind of little frizzy bits coming up. So I'm gonna add a little cube underneath. Just hide it away somewhere. I'm gonna go into edit mode and bevel it into kind of a circle. I'm just trying to make a low poly drop because we're gonna have a bunch of them bouncing around. So I don't want to go too nuts. And let's just give it a, we'll just give it a glossy surface here. Shade smooth. Hide it under here, and let's hit M. New collection. Little spritz. Yes. All right, now we'll select our oil, and look at that. That's kind of fun. Under the particle properties, we'll add a new particle system. We'll call it the spritzening. Render as a collection the little spritz, and it should already be doing something. Yeah, they're coming up, but let's dial this in slightly. So I'm gonna go into weight paint here, and oh, it's rendering on the bottom. Why is that? Why would it be rendering on the bottom? Let's see. Shift N, is it inverted? Yes, it looks like that was it. Excellent. And I'm just gonna weight paint the top. This is where all the the particles will be coming out from. Okay. Now back into the particle settings. Here, we'll go back into object mode. And we can say particles, density, group, and we'll just pick the group we just made. And now all the particles should ideally be coming right out from that. Let's turn up the size because they're very, very small right now. Cool. And let's turn up the normal value here. Hey! Look at that! Now it's going up. I think we can add some randomness. I don't know if that adds it to the velocity or the direction. But... ooh, looks like it might add it to the direction, or maybe it's just coming out of these bits. Why is it coming so much out of the very center? That's kind of interesting. I feel like it shouldn't do that. Source faces. Maybe it's just a fluke. Maybe it's just yeah. Yeah, it looks normal to me. Okay, so we've got a bunch of stuff all kind of going on here. We could add bubbles and things to this. I don't actually think that we need to. Let's try... okay, so one thing that's kind of weird. If we wanted, and this is just something I found out that's gonna save me a lot of pain. I like using auto smooth, but if you use auto smooth on anything dynamic deforming mesh like this, like a soft body sim or like a rigged photo scanned person, Blender actually redecides every frame, maybe multiple times per frame, which edges deserve to be hard or smooth. And if it decides that and gets like confused, sometimes it'll render like a little streak out motion blur and it freaks out. But also, apart from those little motion blur freakouts, nothing else will have motion blur, which is going to be what adds a lot of realism. And so if you're going to be doing something like this under the geometry data, once you've got kind of stuff dialed in, I think this is too much. I want to crank this way up so that it's... did I go the wrong way? So that we only have a couple hard edges here. Maybe let's just go anything above 90 degrees will just be smoothed out. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. You want to apply custom split normals data, and I think that'll just apply it as it is now, so it's not recalculating on every frame, and that's just going to make things feel a lot better. Let's see, let's select the oil. Well, let me select the oil. Let's make it a little more yellow. And if we wanted, this is already pretty yellow, but we could just mix in a yellow, you know, if we go mix shader, diffuse, we could add some like curry sauce on there or something, be like, hey, you are just gonna be delicious. And you can decide how much you want that to be a thing. You could do the same to the sauce, so that way it's actually like floating in, you know, like a curry sauce type deal. But yeah, all right, so I'll render this and show you what we got. Oh wait, but before I render, I should show you how to bake it, because you do want to bake these sorts of physics. So under the physics tab, just under cache, wherever that might be, yeah, you pick your frame range, 250, that'll be fine. Oh, let's say 350. And just bake all dynamics. And this will calculate the particles bouncing around and the dynamic paint and all of that stuff. So I will let this calculate and then hit render, and I'll show you what we got. Okay, so no recording yet, because it took me a while to actually dial in the physics. They kept almost working, but I ended up having to turn the, let's see, the vertex mass down a little bit, and I played some with the object collision distances, and that helped keep the spatula from running in to the meat. But it took a while to kind of dial in, and then I hit render, and I realized there's still a little bit more I want to do to this. So this is looking fine. But let's add a little subsurface scattering. The light's actually shining around inside the potatoes. So open the shader editor here, and I'm just gonna drag this right into the subsurface color. And once this starts rendering, let's just turn up subsurface a little bit and see if we kind of like how it looks. There, that already looks a lot more like soft potatoes to me. I'm happy about that. And let's add some these dots are still coming out of the middle, which is weird. My guess is if I started over, it wouldn't do that, but I think it won't actually mess up the render that much, so I'm not worried about that. Let's add some steam. F3, images as planes, and let's go to the steam elements. These are the ones I released to the Tier 7 folks a while ago. They loop and all that, which is nice. Import, and I'm just gonna stick this here in the food. And I'm going to make it cyclic because it does loop, and right now it'll just be a black card. Cool. But I'm going to set up a transparent and translucent with a mix shader, and instead of feeding the principled, this video is just going to power the mix between the two. Oh, M connected, yes. And my guess is these are backwards. There we go. So now it's there. It's just very faint. You can see this stuff better when there's light hitting it, but we can also add a little color ramp in here if we want to. Just crunch down the whites just a tad. And here we can blow this up. And if we want to, we can duplicate this layer, offset it, and then create a new version of the texture and a new instance of the video clip over here by clicking that button, and that lets us change the starting frame to offset so all the video textures aren't all exactly in sync. And yeah, so hopefully that reads as some nice subtle steam. Alright, so this is gonna be what I render, and I'll see you in a second. Okay, and here's the final result. And I think it works pretty good. I mean, I do want to give a disclaimer. The reason I kind of don't like doing physics-based videos is because you're always going to have to tweak a value, recalculate, tweak a value. There's no one-size-fits-all, you know, situation, because any little variable can throw the whole thing off. But I think it can definitely be worth it, because it's one of the easiest ways to get that feeling of something, you know, like that randomness that's really hard to do by hand. I guess you can kind of tell the splurts are coming from only the very center. Oh, and that they only go the first couple hundred frames. But I like how that it feels right. Anyways, yeah. Well, I'll be posting another video soon talking about how to make some monitors and stuff. Finish the shot up. All right. Talk to you soon.